Pleasure to welcome in now the one and only Bo Levi Mitchell. He was laughing at my Henry Burris impersonation before we came on the air, stunned by how good my Hank is, weren't you, Bo?
I couldn't believe it, man. Sometimes some people just surprise you.
I don't know why that was good either. I didn't realize that I had a Henry Burris impersonation, but we'll save that one for maybe a different day. Today, we are very excited, of course, to welcome you in here on the A Block to talk about all things football, life, otherwise, because I've been looking forward to this for a while. You don't know, Bo, because I haven't actually reached out to Jean and asked for you to join the podcast. But when I started up this podcast originally, I'm thinking, all right, the first week I had like Edere Latanzio because he was retiring from playing with the Ottawa Red Blacks, and I knew him from when I played against him in university in Canada. He's like, that was cool. I like Edere. And then it was like the next week was Rico Murray because he's retiring, or Delvin Brooks. I'm like kind of going through. I'm like, at some point it's going to get kind of quiet here. And I think before the season hits, I should try to get a bunch of quarterbacks. And the first one, honestly, that I wanted was you, not just because I find your game super interesting, but I find you as a person super interesting as well. And I feel like people look at you and they see win percentage and Calgary Stampeders and Grey Cups, and they don't know enough about you. And you do a pretty good job of trying to get out there and be open with people and honest with people, but it's still difficult to get people to understand who you are outside of just the winning percentage and the Stampeders logo, is it not?
Yeah, or the headline from like one interview.
Yeah.
Which I feel like that's what gets played over and over sometimes, which, hey, man, that's what it is as athletes. We get kind of headlines sometimes. But I can't tell you the amount of times I meet somebody and like, hey, I'm from Saskatchewan. I'm a Saskatchewan fan. And, we'll get to talking and whatnot, talk some football, talk X's and O's, talk SAS stuff. And then all of a sudden, like, man, you're actually like a cool, down-to-earth dude. I'm like, thanks. Like, you sound so surprised when you say that.
Yeah.
Like, well, I thought you were an asshole. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. I understand that.
I wonder about that dynamic too, because I remember, and we'll dive into this because I find our crossing in 2013 to just be funny now, looking back 8 years later. But in 2013, I remember going to Lethbridge, and first of all, my favorite part was that Drew Tate got flown there, and we all rode a bus. But but I do. Well, I mean, you get the perks, I'm sure, now being the starting quarterback in Calgary. You've probably been on the plane enough with Huff and Dickey to know. But the idea of going to Lethbridge because it was South Alberta and there was a turf war raging of green versus red and recruiting future fans of the Calgary Stampeders so they didn't end up as Rider fans as in the province of Alberta. I found that to be intriguing even when I had no idea what the hell any of that was about. And you mentioned Saskatchewan just as an example of somebody who's like, wow, you're actually a decent person. You've been painted as the evil empire, the king of the evil empire in not just Saskatchewan, but I feel like in Western Canada. And that's so unfair because anybody that actually knows you is like, yeah, he's not a bad person. I don't understand. It's funny that you use Saskatchewan as that example because that's one of the things I wanted to hit on here. Why do you think that narrative exists of you? Is it just the repetition of people who can maybe cover the Saskatchewan Roughriders or other teams in Western Canada?
I definitely think I'm to blame for it. I think the narrative has been carried now. But I think after 14, after winning the Grey Cup in our first year, I think there was a lot of excitement and everything around it. Obviously, that's when people started to ask who I was, and I really kept to the cliche things and just stayed in my own lane.
Yeah.
And then 15 comes around and we lose to Mike. Mike goes on to win the Grey Cup, and now I've got a chip on my shoulder because we won the Grey Cup, and now we lost. We didn't make it in the West Final, so I'm heated and just like ready to come back with a vengeance. And then 16, we go out and kill it, and that the difference of the 16 team and the 14 team was attitude. 14 was very reserved, like stay in our own house, in our locker room. 16 was it was very we're us against the world, we're better than everybody kind of thing. And I think sometimes in a locker room you tend to gel together and vibe in a certain way. And I maybe got away from who I was and wanted to vibe more with the team and kind of carry that narrative. So I think we started to kind of take things in our own hands and say that, we're better than everybody. We're going to come out here and, whoop this team's ass and this team's ass. And it's not the Canadian way. Let's just say that. So I think the fans, all over didn't love it. In the past, we've played Saskatchewan a couple of times, and I've definitely, fueled the fire, I guess, before the game because, hey, man, it is fun to be the villain. I think if people don't hate you, you're not doing something right. If somebody doesn't hate you, you're playing pretty bad. So I think it's a good thing to have haters. It's a good thing to have a narrative around each game and around just kind of who you are. And And I mean, at the end of the day, it is a business. It is a show. So, we gotta make it fun.
There is a professional wrestling aspect to various points in your career. Like, you've played the heel pretty successfully, but the thing that I find interesting is that I have always viewed you as being the person who you want to cheer for, who dresses themselves up in the black cape and says, no, I'm willing to wear this because I find this to be where I feel more comfortable in game. You obviously use that chip, you use that motivation. You love going at it with people and talking on the field. And I see the different interactions that happen leading up to games, in games, sometimes even post game, where I go in the locker room and you're yelling at me because I haven't listed you as the midseason MOP. I got Riley up in there. It's like, I love that about you, that you're fiery and you're willing to be brash with that stuff. But I feel like all of that stuff, when you tear down the wall, it's just this dude sitting here in a t-shirt and a ball cap and hanging out and talking.
Yeah, I mean, that is me at heart. I'm here to chill, here to I'm a competitive dude for sure. But like, if you were here hanging out, we're having a beer, we're playing ping pong, throwing darts. That's just kind of my vibe, and that's what it is growing up with brothers, right? Like,
yeah,
there's almost like a switch, and I think that's kind of every athlete. Like, as having brothers, like, that's what it was. We compete, we love each other. But at any moment, you look at me wrong and we're going to be on the ground wrestling, when it comes to brothers. Like, that's how we are. We compete. And I think you're right. I think growing up, I went to Katy High School and we were super successful and it almost felt easy in high school. And then went to SMU and it went the exact opposite way. We were dog trash. I mean, it was bad. But I had some amazing players. Like, I think 21 out of the 22 guys on that starting roster went professional. So it just goes to show it's not always talent over, a team. And I think that carrying that into Eastern Washington, what I found was being humble with my teammates, being myself is what everybody on my team vibed with. But then when I stepped on the field, it was time to kind of turn into a different person. And I think that's when I started playing my best. And that's when we won a championship and won most outstanding player in college. And I think that's what it was like finding out, like, okay, like, use the chips of your failures in the past right when you step on the field. And I think that's kind of what I always do now here at Calgary is I show everybody, hey, I'm ready to compete in practice, but you guys are my boys. I'll die for y'all. I'll do everything I can. Leave my body in the field for you guys. But then when we step in the locker room and it's time for the pregame speech, I turn into a different person, and I try not to turn that person off until the game's over and we won the game.
The maturation process that takes is kind of amazing, though, Bo, because a lot of people, you make mistakes, maybe you throw a bad interception in a game, or you fumble when you should have thrown it away and you took a hit you didn't need to, or you held onto the ball too long, or whatever that might be. It could be micro, it could be macro. A lot of the time when you're younger, you make those mistakes and you just, well, shit, stuff happens. And you just move on and you don't really learn from it. But it sounds like you, over the process of your career from Katy all the way up until 2021 in Calgary as the starting quarterback and all the accolades that you've accomplished in the last decade, that you are picking up things on a more micro level than ever before, and you're holding them to it, like, closer to the chest where they don't really leave you anymore.
Yeah, I think you have to, man. I mean, you're molded by every experience that you have, right? So I think coming through Katy, what's funny about that, both my brothers got kicked off the team because in Katy, you're not allowed to drink. You're not allowed to have facial hair, piercings, tattoos.
Wow.
They want you to be a certain person in that locker room. They want you to all look the same and act the same. And I think that I had a chip on my shoulder for my brothers and everything being off the team, but then to look at my brother, Corey, who was like, hey, the reason I'm off the team is my own fault. Like, you don't blame them. It was my fault that I went out drinking. So I'm not ever going to let you do it. So he never let me drink, never let me party in high school, and obviously went on to great things. And then going to college, now I get to be my own person. I was like, oh, I'm going to drink and have fun, and became the starting quarterback, day one as a freshman. And I still think that today the success would not be there if I didn't lead the nation in interceptions and sacks, because every one of those interceptions and sacks you learn from.
Yeah.
You get to watch on film and be like, man, this is where I messed up. This was on me. It wasn't on no lineman. It wasn't on the receiver. Like, this is on me as a quarterback. I'm the guy that has to pull the trigger. I can't blame that guy, because on June Jones' offense, you can run a corner route or a post route, just depending on leverage. And sometimes I would just try to predict it and I just throw it. I'm like, oh no, you messed up. This is where you should have been. And it's like, okay, now you learn from them. And I think the reason, I guess, the success is there because of the failures is because nowadays I think coaches have such a quick trigger to change the guy. Hey, you threw 3 interceptions the first game, I'm going to the next guy. Where instead, June Jones stuck with me and we went 1-11. And then June Jones stuck with me again. We're 3-4, and then I tear my left shoulder. And I think when a coach is willing to do that and willing to let you go through the mistakes, that's when they start to see the builds. Like, that's my biggest thing, I think, to coaching is when I talk to coach, I try to tell them, like, man, if you believe in this kid and you actually see the potential in him and you're like, this guy is going to be a star, you've got to stick with him. Doesn't matter what media says. Doesn't matter what anybody else says. Like, I know your job's on the line, but your job's on the line and you have to choose the right guy. Now, you just jump from guy to guy and a little bit of failure here, a little bit of failure there. You're never going to find the right one. But, man, now people stick with people. And I think that's when you start to see people grow and succeed. And, I mean, obviously, man, since I've gotten here, it's just I've taken all that information, all that failure, and then I couple that with Dave, who, as you know, I mean, soak anything that guy up can say to you, write it down, memorize it, because you're going to be a better person, a better quarterback, a better athlete. Like, it's just it's been a damn blessing to be around somebody like that. I think the same thing, like when people talk about, Belichick or, maybe even like Tom House when it comes to mechanics and stuff. It's just, you try to soak up everything that guy says. And it's just, I'm just a painting with, fucking 30 different artists that have all worked on.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a lot of follow-ups on all that stuff from June to Dave to otherwise, but I want to start with the question that you kind of mentioned there, Katie, and the way that they treat the football culture. Do you like football culture? Because I know you love football, but the idea of football culture of trying to cultivate people into being inside of a box and only allowing them to be that certain type of person. I get it at the high school level, maybe when you're talking about creating that certain type of person, but there's this mentality, especially in places like Texas, obviously, where you played high school ball, where you're asked to become this certain box. And if you're not in that box and you're not that type of person, then you're not allowed to be a part of the group. And I've always kind of been amazed by that because there's not a lot of other sports that hold that as religiously as football does. And you've lived it in the most extreme of climates.
Well, and I think sometimes like right now, like let's say you clipped what I said and you posted it on Twitter. People are going to see that as, like almost like bullying or hazing of young kids and innocent. And I lived it, and it's not at all what it is. What it is trying to teach kids discipline for one. And are you willing to put the team ahead of yourself? And what that means is, it doesn't mean, are you willing to put Katie above anything you want? What it means is, am I, Bo, willing to not try to be different and unique when it comes to football, but am I willing to stand next to Marshall and do the same thing that he's willing to do for our team? Instead of me, the starting quarterback at Katy, instead of me going out and throwing a party and then cops showing up and a couple guys, now those players don't get to play. We put ourselves ahead of the team, ahead of everybody else's interest and work ethic that they put in through all summer, hell week, spring ball. All that work is thrown away on a weekend. You know what I mean? So it's kind of teaching us, hey, are all 60 of you willing to throw away your selfish desires of, oh, I want to look different, I want to be different, and are you willing to kind of come here together to do something together, to do something great? And I know that like nowadays, today's culture is more like, be unique, be different. And I do agree with that. I think it's awesome and amazing. I think at a young age, it is very, very important to learn discipline and learn how to come together as an entire group, because football is different. There's not many other sports where there's 60, 70 guys on a team, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a different, I don't even know if Katie's even exactly like that anymore. I think they've obviously expanded that box a little bit. But it's just the way it was. Like, even when Andy Dalton went there, that's the way it was. When I went there, that's the way it was. And, it's, I hope it doesn't change, but, I think everything has to change for sure.
It reminds me of a quote from John Amici, the former NBA player who's now, British philosopher and does a lot of great work with kind of social injustice. And he has a quote where he says, the culture of an organization, a group, a room, a team, whatever, is not the most common behavior that is allowed. It's the lowest common denominator behavior that the group allows. And that kind of feels like what you're talking about, where they set a tone of, you all have to be in this together. And it's sometimes mistaken for, well, we're all in this together because we're all doing this in the same way. It's like, what this is really about is holding everybody accountable so that the lowest common denominator gets brought up and we're all trying to accomplish the same stuff together, right? It's a very small tweak to what you're talking about, but that's, I feel like, how people miss the point of we're all doing the same. No, it's that we're not allowing the bottom behavior to exist inside this room.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you got it exactly. My oldest brother, 6'6", rocket arm. He got kicked off the team because he didn't get along with the quarterback coach. He would yell at him, when his coach yelled at him. And I think, they had a bad dynamic from the very beginning. And he transferred and went to play at a different school. And what it is at Katy, when you're there, what they try to do is they say, like, there's certain things that aren't tolerated. Okay. And there's a hierarchy here. There's a head coach, there's coaches below him, and then there's all players, and every player is on the same level. The starting quarterback is no different than number 46 man on the roster, because they never want it to feel that way. Like, you wear Katy on your jersey and that's it. Like, that's the name on the jersey. That's what you represent. It's this name on the front. It's never the name on the back. I know that's the cliche thing, but it's even ingrained into the playbook. Like, when we run, we call it, I right, pro right, 49 toss. So that's just a fullback I formation, fullbacks lead, halfback toss. The quarterback, as he tosses, he leads the fullback. So he's the first blocker. He's going out to cut the first block. So that's like, it's ingrained in our offense. Like, nobody here is more important than anybody. The quarterback's going to cut this guy. Fullback's cutting this guy. If all these 10 guys don't do their job, the number 11 man who has the ball can't get his job done. And it's just like, it's just, you learn that camaraderie and hey, man, we went 16-0 and won a state championship. And, Katy just won their 7th or 8th one, I think. So there's definitely something to it. It's not necessarily that I think, like, hey, take every kid and say, like, you all have to fit this exact same box, because no, personality wise, no, keep your personality who you are, be unique, be different. But you're right. If the lowest somebody wants to act in school when it comes to discipline, grades, things like that, if he can see that everybody else wants him to do great, we can pull that guy up as well. And like you're saying, the higher he is up, the higher we all get to go. So
that's a really interesting summation, because high school football is just a different monster, man. Like, and especially down there, and being able to have that mentality across the room, I find to be really intriguing. 2 follow-ups. One, how the hell did you not end up being 6'6"? Because you always joke about wearing the gloves and because you got the tiny hands. And I'm thinking, like, I didn't know your brother was that big. I'm trying to imagine Bo Levi is like a 6'5", 6'6" dude now.
Yeah, we wouldn't be talking right now.
You'd probably be playing down so. That's fair enough. And the other one that I have for you,
I wouldn't be. I'd be in the MLB. Hey,
oh yeah,
play baseball. I'd be a closing pitcher for the Astros. Yeah, my grandpa is 6'9", my brother's 6'6". Dude, if you looked at all 4 of me and my brother standing next to each other, like, don't look the same at all. You got my brother Corey who tried out for the Stamps and he made it to the last cuts. If you saw us, like, just in our boxers, y'all would be like, there's no way y'all are related. He is just like 0% body fat, calves the size of baseballs. You know what I mean? Like, 8 packs since the day he came out of the womb. My littlest brother is 6'3", and he is an absolute stick. Like, he has no fat, no muscle on his whole body. And then you got Pat, who's just 6'6" and just a monster of a person. Like, we look nothing alike, but that made competing pretty awesome growing up.
That is so good, man. I would have never guessed that. But I do want to ask you now about your CFL origin story to move things along, because you mentioned the Astros, being a closing pitcher for the Astros and all the rest. I remember the first thing that jumped out to me about you, as I'm a young 20-something quarterback walking into Stampeders training camp in 2013 as part of the then CIS, now U Sports internship program for quarterbacks, was being able, well, the first thing was that the second I met Dickinson, he started teaching me the cadences, red, white, and blue. And that was terrifying because I walked into his office and I was like, hey, nice to meet you. I'm like super nervous because I've been watching him on TV my entire life, either coaching or playing. And I shake his hand and he's like, all right, so, here's what we're going to do, Marsh. We're going to go ahead. He's like, first cadence is we're just going to, what? And he just starts screaming at me in the
Oh my
office, and
God.
everybody in the building didn't even flinch. I'm like, he does this often, doesn't he?
Do you just sit at home and practice impersonations?
I watch so much CFL football. It's hard not for stuff to just like seep into you. It really is.
Yeah.
But like the other one that I always remember of my Dickinson impersonation that I didn't know I had until I did it one day was after you guys played a game at McMaster, I think in 13 or 14.
Oh yeah.
And I was we actually watched it in res because none of us cheap ass students decided to pay money to go see. So we got one of the top floors of res, one of our buddies work. We got a key. We went in there. We all piled on top of each other. We stacked couches up and we all watched from the top floor. And after the game, there's a limo sitting in front of our residence. And, we had some beers while we were watching the game inside this res. And I go downstairs and Dave's there and he's, running to the limo and they're getting it and they're going to the airport to get out of there. And I see him. And the second that I see him, I go, hey, coach, good to see you. And he just walks over and goes, hey, Marsh, yeah, we kept an eye on you, started the season real well. And, stuff happens. And and it was like the nicest way that somebody has ever told me, yeah, not good. Not
Dude,
good.
I'll tell you what. Dave is as honest as a person as it's gonna come. Like he's not gonna bullshit you. Like he's gonna tell you like yeah, like your chances to make the team aren't great, but if you come out and ball out, that'll increase your chances. You know what I mean? Like he'll tell you straight up. He's not gonna bullshit you because like he was in that position, right? Like he's been bullshitted by people. He'll never do it. But you're right, man. He's got one direction, and that is football. It's as soon as you see him, like he'll ask about my family now. I mean, we've been around, I've been around 10 years now, but the moment you see him, Bo, I was watching a film the other day, man, and in 2015, you threw this corner route, and I don't think you looked at the corner to make sure you wasn't covering it.
Yeah, he sees it all, man. He really does. So when you were getting an opportunity to come up to the CFL, how did you get from Eastern Washington into the CFL? And did you know kind of what Dickinson was about or how that was going to work, working with him as an offensive coordinator, obviously at the time with Huff being the head coach?
Are you talking about like from Eastern Washington to Calgary?
Yeah, well, just like your origin story of being, when you were first approached to the CFL, or when it became something that you really wrapped your mind around, or how much you knew about what the situation might have been getting into the CFL.
Yeah. So basically, what happened was, Matt Nichols was a quarterback before me at Eastern. Big shoes to fill. He broke, damn near every record they had, it seemed like. And I don't remember if he got drafted in the seventh round, or if he went undrafted to the Cowboys. But I'm at Eastern, we're playing, and Matt was my host, JC was my host, Greg Peach was my host. All those names.
Yeah.
All CFL great guys. And so whenever Matt left, that's when I transferred to Eastern Washington. So obviously we're all interested in Matt making the team and seeing it. And they drafted Stephen McGee out of A&M. And I think they drafted him in the 4th round. He got $1 million signing bonus. This is pre, Matt Stafford gigantic signing bonus where they changed the rules for rookies. And he outplayed Steven in both preseason games. And we're all sitting here celebrating like, yes, like Matt made it for sure. It's happening. And, next day, obviously that gets cut. And we're like, what is going on?
Helps to be from A&M, I guess.
Yeah. And then next night, I couldn't believe it. And the next night I'm asking my head coach, we're heading to an alumni dinner. I'm asking my head coach, I'm like, dude, how did Matt get cut? Like, we all watched it. Like, there's no way an intelligent quarterback coach can allow this person to get cut over this person. And he's like, honestly, I bet the quarterback coach was banging his hand on the table. I bet the head coach was. But the fact is, somebody decided to give Stephen McGee $1 million signing bonus.
Yeah.
And he's going to be there because if not, whoever did is getting fired. So that person's making sure that Stephen, and I'm like, okay. He's like, that's when he told me, he said, Bo, he goes, man, I know you don't know much about it. He's like, the CFL would be an amazing game for you. And that's where Matt had just signed over to Edmonton. He's like, it would fit your game. You would do some awesome, amazing things there. But, he's like, just look it up just because I can tell you right now, no matter and we just won the championship. He's like, I can tell you no matter how your senior year goes, you're not tall enough, your hands aren't big enough, and the competition you play isn't good enough. So you're going to be anywhere from that 6th, 7th round to undrafted free agent. And you're going to have to, go in there and play like John Elway to be able to even have a chance at getting signed as a 3rd string quarterback. I'm like, okay, like it helps to have somebody talk to you honestly and not no, Bo, you're the best in the world. Don't listen to anybody. Like, break walls. You know what I mean? And so I look it up. First thing it comes up, CFL, Ricky Ray.
Well, I was going to
5,000.
say, this is what I wanted to ask you before you keep going here, is when somebody says to you, hey, CFL, look it up. What do you look up?
I literally typed in CFL. Canadian Football League comes up, and then instantly, because obviously I search other quarterbacks, like your search history. So the first thing is like other things search, like quarterback. So it's like Ricky Ray, and it showed me his stats from like the last like 4 or 5 years, and this is 2011. So it was like his stats from like 10, 9, 8, and 7, and like they were all like over 5,000 yards, and I was like 5,000 yards. I'm like, hold up. I looked up, play 18 games. I was like, oh, hell yeah, let's go. I want over 5,000 yards. So it was interesting. It was instantly exciting to me to think of a league that was built more for my game. Now, the Texas kid in me obviously wanted to try the NFL, so I waited until after the draft. Got offered the jobs that come in as like undrafted free agent, where you're coming in basically as a camp arm. And I talked to my agent. He's like, dude, he's like, you can go undrafted free agent. He's like, but you go there, you get cut. He's like, you can go try out for a CFL team, make it there, and work your way up to NFL one day if that's the way your path's supposed to go. So I was like, okay, cool. So I went out to a regional tryout, watching film with Dave, and everybody's in there, and Dave's kind of just trying to show us the game. Here's the downhill waggle. Here's this. And all right, now we're going to go practice. So we're walking out to practice, and I'm like, hey, who is that? Who's your starting quarterback there? He's like, oh, that's Drew Tate. He just took the job from our last starter, Henry Burris, who was, probably a future Hall of Famer. And I was like, okay, I'm going to come take his job. And I think at the time, Dave was probably like, God damn, this kid is a punk. But I showed out really well in that camp. It went really awesome. The second day, I guess, now the legend, I guess, goes, the second day, we're supposed to have a full day of 7-on-7. And basically, Huff walks out and he goes, I want to see Bo throw 2 cover 3 seam routes. Yeah. I want to see him throw one to the left and see him throw one to the right. And so Dave's like, hey, man, just so you know, like, this is it right here. Like, I need you to make this throw and put it on a rope and show your head coach that you can do it. And if you do, you're probably going to be on the team.
Man, the pressure of that. The pressure of like thinking about a singular throw, and because like that's the same as a golf shot where somebody's like, hey, you only have one chance at this and there's a dog leg left, and if you miss it, spray it into the woods, you're not going to get your PGA Tour card. It's like, come on.
Yeah, but you got to think, like, it's what you do. You know what I mean? Like, it's a test to me, which I think that's where the pressure started to become more of like something I like thrived. You know what I mean? Like I needed it. I needed that pressure. I feel like when games are easy, when anything's easy, it's like, oh well.
Yeah.
But when someone's like, I bet you can't hit this, can of Coke off that trash can from 40 yards. If you do, I'll give you, whatever. And it's just like that pressure of like, okay, like if you don't think I can do it, like, let's do it. So draw back and cover 3. I look both ways and, look them off one way, throw a little dot to the left and then do it again, throw a dot to the right. And the receiver both times did an amazing job of like, kind of stimming out and working vertical. And we're 2 plays into the practice. So I throw a seam to the left, throw a seam to the right. Huff blows a whistle. He's like, all right, that's it. We're done. And everybody else on the field is kind of like, wait, what? Like thinking like, all right, this is my chance to like get this tryout done. Like, you got to think these regional tryouts, man, like these coaches have a pretty good idea of who they want. They want to see your 40 times, stuff like that. But then they want to see your on-field stuff. And once they see you moving the field at all, they have a pretty good understanding. Like guys like Huff, our scouting department, they have a pretty good idea if you can make it in the CFL or not. So I think everybody else, they had an idea, and then they wanted to know who they're going to bring as a quarterback. So, yeah, man, it was one of those fun moments that, things worked out the right way for sure.
It was all a mirage just to see if you could throw cover 3 seam balls. That's amazing.
The second day was. Yeah.
The whole thing was just a show to see whether or not you could do that. I love the background on that because, I mean, that is, like I said, the origin story to you in Calgary in the CFL, but really that relationship of like Huff going with his gut and making decisions. Like that's part of your history with the CFL is that you've seen it now, I'm sure, at other positions, whether it's guys that get let go from the team that you thought were going to stick or guys that you don't see very much of them. They come in and all of a sudden they're a starting receiver for you or like that. Your organization, Calgary, has this history of identifying talent, seeing it, trusting it, and just running with it. And that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, man, it's pretty impressive. I don't know how, like, to be a scout is a very, very, to me, is like an innate talent. Like, to be able to see somebody and understand their potential. Um, I can tell you on, like, just off the top of my head, 3 guys that I personally said I didn't think were going to make it at receiver, and they became 3 of my best receivers I've ever played with. So DeVaris Daniels, we're in training camp, and he made one mistake in a practice that I didn't like, so I instantly had like this, oh, this guy's, I don't know about him. And Dinwiddie just being like, he's like, oh, dude, we think he's like one of our top guys that we like. And I'm like, what? I'm like, no way. And red and white game, I throw a ball and he dives and makes this catch. And I'm like, oh man, you might be right. But so basically, like, what it comes down to is, like, when we go through training camps and stuff, Dave and the guys, every now and then, like, I never have any kind of say of like, oh, I want this receiver over this receiver, no matter what. That's not an Aaron Rodgers kind of thing. Like, do it, get it done. You know what I mean? Like, that's not how it works. More like hey, listen, we're in between these 2 guys. Like, you're one of the 11 votes, and your vote counts the least. We just want to know, who do you like and who do you prefer? You know what I mean? And I'm like, because it's the mantra of, like, no players over any other player. And 3 times I picked the other guy, and they kept the other guy. So it was DeVaris Daniels, Markin Michelle, and KJ. And those 3 guys,
wow,
those 3 guys almost have more touchdowns than anybody I've ever thrown to.
Who did you pick over them?
3 guys you've never heard of.
Yeah,
because they all got cut.
That's amazing, man. Yeah, I mean, that way that you identify talent, like you say, is innate, but it's obvious that they have it, right? The things that they surround you by. I'm always amazed, Bo, in the Canadian draft every year, because I'm covering it for CFL.ca, and I don't get a chance to watch as much film as I would like to, honestly, of those guys, just because of life and time constraints and other work and stuff. But when I see somebody, like even Justin Lawrence is one that comes to mind, where the first second that I watch his YouTube, I look at his measurables like anybody else, and I see how he does the combine, and he's got a great bench press, but man, he's short and he's got short arms, and he's not. There's a lot of things that you kind of nitpick and you pull apart. You say, well, I don't think he can do that or this, but you put on his highlight tape on YouTube, and highlights can be deceiving, obviously, but you put on his highlight tape, and the dude had the most fun offensive line tape, better than guys who were getting NFL looks that were coming out of University of Calgary or from Montreal or from. It didn't matter. You put it on, you're like, that guy is so much fun at what he does. And then every year, my rule of thumb is that there's always 1 or 2 people in the draft that I circle as not going to get the respect he deserves. He'll be a Stampeder. He'll have a great career. Like Fraser Sopik is another one where I look at Fraser Sopik. I looked at him in the draft. I had seen him play live. I'm like, that dude is a baller. He's a great football player. He's undersized. He's not going to get the love. Some people are going to be like, well, you might be a free safety. And I'm like, Calgary's just going to end up with him. He's going to be amazing on special teams. He's going to be a fun locker room guy, and they're going to be better off for it. It's crazy to me how it happens year in, year out. And it's not a slight to the other teams that they don't see necessarily the same way, or they don't get the value or whatever it is, but there's always a late round pick that falls, and I go, yep, okay, there it is. Congratulations, Calgary just got better again.
Yeah, the truth is, I don't know who the person is. We have 3 or 4 scouts, and we've had a couple over the past, but with Huff as well, with Dave, I assume Huff has a lot to do with some of these talents. Like, just to have the eye that he has to pick some of these guys like J-Law, like Fraser Sopik, not many people have that eye. Like, J-Law, it's just being a dog. Like, when it comes to O-lineman, like, if I turn on tape and I want to look at an O-lineman, I just want to find out, like, I don't care about any measurables. I want to know, is he a dog? Like, is he going to put the person he's facing on his back? And then Fraser, man, like, he might be one of my favorite humans on the team. Like, he's a dude that he's quiet in the locker room. You know what I mean? Like, he's not trying to talk over anybody else. He kind of played to that mantra of, like, all right, rookie year, I need to shut my mouth. I need to get here. I need to ball the fuck out.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. And there were times where, he had a stinger. I think it was right shoulder, left side. And every time on special teams, like, you would never know, because he flew down like a missile, and he threw his body, and he come off the side, just like holding it. Doctors come up, blah, blah, blah. Like, hey, do you need to come out? You need to come out. Like, no. Punt's coming up. I got to get out there. And I walked up to him one time, like, man, I was like, a lot of people might not see it, and you might not be on camera right now. I was like, but you got my respect, and I promise I'll fight for you at any point in your career, because what I'm watching right now is impressive. And the dude just, like, he just goes to work, man. Like, he is an absolute missile out there.
You know where I think that comes from, though, Bo, is that you're talking earlier about running, a power I toss with a quarterback as the first lead around the edge and has to cut down whoever's first there. It's like that's some Permian Panthers bullshit that you have ingrained in you of like Fraser Sopik's the small, undersized guy who's willing to fight, pops his shoulder and got a stinger, whatever, and he just goes over, massages it, and keeps fighting through it. And it's like where you were brought up, the way you learned the game fits perfectly with that dude, even though he's from the University of Western Ontario Mustangs.
Yeah, it's true, man. I mean, honestly, that part of my game isn't there anymore. I'm not the guy running out in front making a cut block. Dave took me off short yardage probably 2-3 years ago. But at some point, like, it was fun because when short yardage came, when I had to be the short yardage quarterback in 12 and 13, it was like I got to get back to that. Like, you're no longer a quarterback. You are a pawn. Like, grab the ball, go get a yard, and get off the field. You know what I mean? Like, and it was fun again. Like, it was like, oh yeah, like, let's go. Like, I have a purpose. I have a reason to be here. And I think that for any third string quarterback in CFL, like, it's exciting. It's a way to make a name for yourself there in the beginning. Buckley did it there for a while and, did an amazing job at it as well. And I think that, he probably would say that he had a fun time with that part of it. But yeah, man, it's definitely ingrained. And I see those guys on the field that do it. And yeah, I think it does bring out that like inner child in me. Like, oh man, like I vibe with that guy because he puts football over damn near anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get back to, I know I'm jumping all over the place here, but it's fun to talk with you again. It's been way too long since we've done this. So
yeah, it has been.
And I want to ask you about when I mentioned, the origin story, and then I got distracted by Dave and my fake impersonation of him barking out cadences. Was I remember walking through the facility when they gave me the tour the first day. And as I kind of wandered through when you go into obviously the actual locker room, to the left is the little weight room, which I'm surprised that weight room is not larger. But anyways, when you go into the weight room, go past the weight room on the left, I remember seeing some dude working out in there, tatted up, not as much as you are now. I don't think. I think you've added some stuff, but I remember seeing you with some tats and having a Houston Astros hat on backwards, working out in a CFL facility. And I immediately, I'm like, who the hell is? And I just kept on my tour. And it was this like little tiny snippet into what was to come for you in your career. Because I remember when I got to the building, KG was sitting in the actual, meeting room. He was already trying to figure out, how he was going to attack making the team and what the offense was going to look like. And then Drew rolled up with long hair on this little tiny bike, and he rolls up on the bike, and Dickinson's like, "Hey, Drew, what's going on?" He's like, "Not much, man. Just bought this little bike off a kid down the street." And it was just like, all right, random, cool, I guess. Sounds good, Drew. And then I walk in and you're in the weight room. And I was like, those three like tiny experiences to me painted the picture of not necessarily why Drew didn't end up having great success. Obviously, the elbow was messed up otherwise, but it for me, if I'm to extrapolate that, was you were the young hungry dog in the weight room getting after it before rookie camp had even begun a couple days before. Drew Tate's roaming around on a bike somewhere in Calgary, and KG's doing the old guy thing where he's like, I don't need to be working out. I'm not going to make the team. I'm not going to be successful because I'm working out. I'm not going to go roaming around the community because I'm an older guy. I'm just going to get in here and do the veteran quarterback stuff. Tell me that room specifically in 2013, the dynamic of that room, because I feel so lucky to have just been dropped into that and be sitting in those meetings for a couple of weeks and just basically looking around and going, man, there's like a crazy amount of different approaches that are happening in here, and they're all being run by somebody who's done this forever in Dickey.
Yeah, man, it was that quarterback room, like sitting in there, you couldn't have more different personalities. You know what I mean? Like KG, like you said, KG was the old head and just had all the knowledge. Drew just had all the swagger that like, and I got to say this, man, I've always been sad for Drew because to me, he was one of the more talented quarterbacks I've ever learned from and been around, period. And just had the shittiest luck.
What was his greatest talent? Like when you say that he was one of the most talented guys,
dude, he is a lot like Dave in the sense that like he is very, very, very smart when it comes to football. X's and O's, like he is insanely smart. And sometimes I think his knowledge of the defense and his anticipation almost got in his way, kind of like it did with me at SMU. Like, oh, I know you're supposed to run a corner right here because of this coverage, and I put it there. But it was like You know what I mean? Like sometimes you catch the ball and he would look directly to where he knew he was going to throw the ball, and he's just sitting there waiting for it to happen. Compared to like the timing of something, like his biggest flaw was just an injury at the wrong time. I mean, and you know, it's sad to say, but it's happened in so many people's careers. I think that, you know, it's just kind of the way it plays out sometimes. Like I mean, dude, I can't even put into words the talent that he had and what it was. It's not like he had the strongest arm in the world. You know, he wasn't that guy. He knew what to do and when to do it and how to do it. And if the people around him weren't there yet, it hindered his ability to be as good as he could be. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I think he was ahead of where our offense was at times. And sometimes that would get him and Dave butting heads a little bit. You know, because Dave's like, well, you know, hey, like you see it that way, and I see it that way too, but the person you're talking to, you know, doesn't see it that way. Right. And yelling, yes. Like you gotta find that happy marriage. Like the thing about Drew, man, Drew is Drew. And I love that about him. He's never gonna change for anybody. I've always envied that about him. I felt like there was a time in my career where I wanted to be somebody else for other people rather than just being me. You know what I mean? Like and detriments came from that, and I learned from it. But you couldn't get Drew not to be Drew if you paid him $1 million, dude. There's no way.
Yeah. And so you've got Drew doing that, which again, like you forced their hand as much as the injury was unfortunate and bad timing and all the rest. You forced their hand because of the way that you were progressing very quickly, right? And you were understanding the game and picking it up. And I always look back at that preseason game played against BC in 2013, the first one at home, where you know, Cabral Richards cabbies running around the sideline doing the sticks, chain gang. And you've got yourself and KG, and Drew goes in the first half, and he didn't have a great first half. And I remember at halftime, he goes in the locker room, and somebody said, like, yo, Drew, you're done for the game. Like, take your shoulder pads up. And he's like, no, I don't deserve it. I don't. Like, he just was super emotional about the way that he had played and how upset he was with stuff. And KG goes in and plays well and obviously gets the opportunity. And then from there, you progress and end up taking over that role going forward. But yeah, the three different people in that room, was there ever a moment where it was most obvious the different approaches that you guys had? Because even standing around during special teams with you where, you know, Dave's going, okay, how are we going to read out this play? It's like you could have three different answers from each three of you guys on the same play because of the way that each three of you saw the game.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I saw it like a you know, like a newborn, basically. You know what I mean? Like Drew had his way. He was going to see something no matter what. Kev had his, you know, I think at that time, like 12, 13, 14 years of experience, the way he was going to see it. And he was very much of like, hey, well, Dave, tell me how you want me to see it. And that's how I'll do it. And then me, I was like, boys, there's only one way for me to see this. And that's the fact that, you know, that guy is going deep. He's faster than him. So I'm going to throw that. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, and I think that's where the success for me married up was taking somebody like myself who, you know, I don't know, maybe like Favre wanted to, I want to score every play first. Like that's the mindset. Like if I can score, why wouldn't I? That's the whole point of this game is to score. So if there's an opportunity to do that, let's do that first. And then I'll find something else if that's not going to work out. Taking somebody with that mindset and marrying him up with Dave, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, now we found that middle ground where we get to take our shots, we get to be smart. And I think that's why Dave and I work so well together. Compared to like, if you have a quarterback that's exactly like Dave, well, it's going to be really hard to find somebody that's as talented as Dave was. You know what I mean? So I think that marriage doesn't work as much with that kind of person. I think that's why Dave and I have always worked so well together. But yeah, man, like Drew and Kev, I owe a lot to those guys because our conversations were never of the, you know, there was never animosity between us. Drew let me stay at his house as a rookie and as a second-year guy before camp started. I stayed with him and Brad Sinopoli. I played video games with those guys. If you ever ask Kev a question, he'll give you more of an answer than you even want, and he'll help you out as much as he can. You know, and it's just like you don't expect that. And then I talked to other QBs who came from like other teams who had legends on their team, and I'm not going to mention the names, but like, hey man, like how was it like working with him? Like, oh shit, he wouldn't help you. Like he wouldn't even talk to you if you're a rookie. Like he's not going to help a guy that might potentially take his job one day. And I remember that moment and who that was about. And I was like, okay, I'm never going to be that. I was like, I'll never do that. So I remember when Nick Arbuckle came a couple of years ago, I think he originally had got cut and then left, and then Dave fought for him to come back because Dave saw that talent. Right. And And the first time he was here, I remember I didn't pay that much attention to what he was doing because I think it was our championship year, and we had a very, very talented team, and it was like more about finding those receivers and things. But if you asked me a question, I'd help him with it and whatnot. And then, he left, and when he came back, I was like, okay, Dave obviously sees something in this guy. I was like, so if I need to change my mindset about what I think about him, you know what I mean? Like, he's asking me questions like, hey, Bo, what time do you get to the stadium? I'm like, oh, I leave at house at 4:30, get there at 5. And then the next day he'll be there at 4:50. And at first I was kind of like, oh, Nick. I was like, in my head I was like, Nick, don't be that guy. Like, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I'm like, you know what? Like, if that's you, be you, and that's what's most important. Like, that's awesome. And so I had to change my mindset about how I thought about Nick. And I was like, you know what? If Dave sees the talent in this guy, there's clearly something there. And I said I was never going to be that guy not to help. I was like, so I need to help this guy as much as I absolutely possibly can. And man, I mean, dude, look at it now. He's and not to my credit, like mainly to Dave and Dinwiddie and what Nick has done for himself, but his story and everything is amazing. And I think that's kind of the process and what you see in the Calgary Stampeders is the fact that somebody like Drew, Kevin, and I can come together and do what we did, and that's continuing all the way till today.
That's so interesting. We'll have to do a different podcast a different time because I'm not going to get to half the questions I wanted to ask you, but that's a good problem to have. Where I ask you about Nick and working alongside Dinwiddie and all of those things, because Toronto has created this really interesting science experiment right now of free agent acquisitions and all the rest that I'm super interested by. But I got to ask you, because you're talking about obviously the early days throughout this podcast. What does 2021 Bo Levi Mitchell think of 2012, 2013 Bo Levi Mitchell? When you look back as a football player, you look at him, what do you think of him?
I love him. Yeah. Because that guy worked out relentlessly every single day. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I didn't have a lot of responsibility in 2012, 2013. I wasn't locked down. I didn't have kids. So I had the affordability to spend every second I had in football, which was in the gym, on my iPad, giving it everything I had. The one thing, if I could go back and tell him, I'd say stop doing curls because my arms got too big at one point, like the way I shouldn't look. Like, and I remember going back to Eastern Washington and asking my head coach, Bo Baldwin, I was like, dude, I'm not throwing the ball the same way I am. He's like, well, look at you. Like, you look like you're in the gym just doing curls and triceps all day. And like in my head, I was like, oh, I am. So, so that makes sense. So yeah, I kind of learned to like start looking up the right. And that's when I started following Drew Brees a lot more and doing more quarterback workouts, not just trying to like, because I was doing short yardage. So I wanted to like, bulk up and take the hits. But yeah, definitely hindered the throwing motion for sure.
That's amazing. Well, it's understandable too. Like if I was going into a short yardage package, I would want to have more weight on my body. And you can't, that's the funny thing is we ask quarterbacks when they come into the CFL, traditionally, they don't just jump into being a starter immediately. You have to be a short yardage guy unless your name is Manziel. And so you get an opportunity to get in but it's a different skill set. Like being a short yardage quarterback, I've always made the argument in this league, you're being asked to do something different than playing quarterback. And then we're all stunned when the short yardage quarterback goes in because of an injury and he doesn't play great. It's like, well, yeah, half the time he hasn't been given the reps. The other half of the time he hasn't been, given the opportunity to actually get the live understanding of what the stuff is about. And his body is designed to plunge forward and gain a yard and a half 3-4 times a game, not to be perfect at dropping back, reading defenses, and putting the ball exactly where he needs to.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a process of the beast, because to me, 12 and 13, you watched all the big starters go down to injury, and some short yardage guys started to make their way into the roster. Like, all of a sudden Mike Riley was playing, and myself and we were having success at very minimal stages. We were having success, and people start to see it as like, oh man, okay, so maybe we don't need 3 quarterbacks on the roster. Maybe we only need 2. But like you're saying, if you're the third string guy and you're the short yardage guy, you have a package that week. Here are the 12 to 13 to 14 plays that we might run at short yardage. And you've got to know them in and out, because you get to practice that for like literally 10 to 15 minutes on day 3 of the week. So when the receiver doesn't know those plays, you've got to be the one that's like, hey, your motion is to here. You need to get to the left foot of the left tackle, and that's when I'm snapping. And then you're coming back to get the ball. Like you need to be able to process that and tell them in a minute amount of time because you got a 20-second play clock. So you're so focused on those 12 or 13 plays, and you're a third string guy. So you know that the starter has to get hurt, the backup has to get hurt for you to go in. So you're not as focused on all the rest of the plays like you should be. Like you still focus during the week, you still get your reps. You have an idea of the reps you're going to get and which plays are going to be. So you kind of really focus on those. And then now we're starting to get to transitions like, okay, well, maybe you only need to have 2 quarterbacks on the roster.
Yeah.
So now the starter and then now the backup is a short yardage guy. So like Nick is being the short yardage guy and also having to know the entire offense, but then have this package of short yardage stuff as well. And then a guy goes in and maybe doesn't play as great. And everybody's like, oh, maybe he can't make it. Like, well, no, that guy's being asked to do a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. It's tough, man. Like I said, I got a bunch more stuff that I could ask you here, but I just want to finish off with some rapid fire
Cool.
stuff with you, Bo. Here, purest thrower of the ball in the CFL, not named Bo Levi.
Ooh, Jonathan Jennings.
Oh, really? Yeah. I mean, it's funny. There's a couple of throws that when I've gone through and done the game tracking of him where I just go, oh my God. Like, I can't believe there's one throw that he made rolling to his left when he was, I think, in BC. It might've been Ottawa in BC. I'm not sure, but where he throws it down, it must've been when he was in BC because it was, I think, Nick Price that he threw it to, but it's like 55 yards to his left rolling away. It's like everybody starts drooling about what's happening at pro days now in the States with guys making ridiculous throws. I'm like, I saw Jennings make that throw in person.
Yeah, man, he throws the tightest, prettiest spiral I've seen in a long time, and it looks very effortless.
Who's the most accurate passer in the CFL, not named Bo?
Trevor Harris.
Knew it. Most athletic.
I like how you didn't say not named Bo because you didn't know. I'm not gonna that.
Man, you get knocked a lot for not being athletic enough. I was in the radio booth when you took off and ran against the Ticats, and the guys over at 770 on radio damn near lost their minds. They were punching the glass and the table and screaming that you needed to. I'm like, this is such an overrated conversation for what you do and how well you do it. I die inside when people are like, but he doesn't run. I'm like, who gives a shit? He'll throw a 7-yard crossing route 1 billion times. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's a conversation for another day for sure. Honestly, I would probably say Jeremiah Masoli. Some of the things he does can't even fathom it. Like Mike Riley's obviously, a super athlete. But it's just the running backwards sometimes. Like the play that you tell the quarterback to never do. He does it and then escapes, and then he'll find a guy 40 yards down the field. I'm like, dude, hats off to you.
I saw Sully one time on a 2-point conversion on the road in Winnipeg when I was calling the game there. Run back to Winnipeg's 45 or 50-yard line on a 2-point conversion attempt. It's one of my favorite plays ever. I'll find the video afterwards. I'll clip it and I'll send it to you if I can dig it up.
I'm sure I saw it in person, but I've got to see that.
He shrugs 3 dudes and then he runs backwards, evading a 4th and a 5th and a 6th as he's running back 40 yards. And then he throws it as far as he can, which gets it to right around the goal line. And I remember calling it on radio and going, well, add another to the bucket of things I've never seen at quarterback before while watching Jeremiah Masoli. But yeah, he does some crazy stuff like that. Who's the quarterback that you're most likely to watch? And this is a question that I bring up because one of my favorite, well, you brought up Favre earlier. One of my favorite NFL films clicks is Randy Moss with the jacket on playing for the Vikings. And he gets up from the bench and he says, this Brett Favre out here, this Brett Favre. And he runs out because he wants to watch Brett Favre as he's on the sidelines. Who's the quarterback that you are most likely to want to watch if you are on the sidelines?
Yeah, it's Mike for sure.
Is he? Yeah.
Yeah, Mike's just the guy that I've always rivaled myself with as far as, having fun playing against him, because I think we're pretty similar in the sense that, like, if there's a chance to score a touchdown, we're gonna try to do it. You know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot of guys that take as much risk as we do down the field, and I think I really respect that about him, because not only does he take the risk, but he hits them as well. And I think that's kind of been our rivalry going back and forth, is that deep ball, rivalry. And I think he's just one of those guys I always have more fun watching. But then as soon as he runs, I look away because I know he's going to lower his shoulder, try to jump. I'm like, dude, don't break your hip right now trying to do this, please.
Yeah, he's fun to watch, man. I don't blame you for having that answer, but I am amazed to hear you say that after the number of battles you guys have had. But the mutual respect is obviously there, as you say that you enjoy the rivalry with him, and even the deep, like the little things, like the deep ball rivalry. Because when I watch you guys and I track your guys' throws, it's like you guys play the game in a different way than the rest of the league.
Yeah, it's definitely different, man. I think in the beginning there was a hatred towards each other for like just wanting to beat each other,
Right.
and kind of be named like the top dog that was young at the time. And it's just turned into like we've had so many great bouts back and forth, not only in the regular season but in the playoffs. And we talk every single year when we're like number one, number two team in the league. We're like, dude, why do we have divisions? Why can we not play each other in the Grey Cup?
Oh
Like,
man. That would have been amazing to see you guys go at it through like 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Like that would have been a run because you guys would have probably been in that dance against each other for sure. But that's like, I mean, I know that you're a big hoops.
Multiple times would have been.
I know you're a big hoops fan too, though. That makes it's like when you look at the Western Conference a lot of years and you're like, why did the Spurs and the Lakers have to play each other in the Western Conference final? Like it would have made a lot of sense if we would have had it other ways. But most talented quarterback alumni in Calgary history to you? Who's the guy that when you see clips of them ripping around, whether it's Flutie, Garcia, otherwise, that you look at and you're just like, Jesus, that guy's different?
I mean, I've seen Dave do some really cool stuff. I can't give him that credit. Jeff obviously did some awesome stuff, dude, but come on, man. Nobody did what Doug Flutie did. Nobody.
How mind-blowing is it sometimes when you think about the history of your position on your team and you're the guy and you're the one that has a bunch of the records, Bo? Like you can say whatever you want about how Doug played and Jeff did. I watched the 98 Grey Cup the other day while I was working out, and I remember looking at the way that he was throwing it and the way he was running that offense in the 98 Grey Cup. And I'm like, man, that's amazing. And then you look at what Doug did and how athletic he was, but then you realize you have a lot of the accolades over all of those guys at that position in that organization. It's like being shortstop for the Yankees and you have all the records.
Yeah. I just don't think, Henry and I are like the only two that have like the long tenure really with the Stamps. Like the Stamps are known for getting a lot of the great quarterbacks. And then whenever they feel like, maybe they're going downhill, like, boom, get them out of here. Or they just had different opportunities like Dave, Jeff, and Doug all did. So, yeah, I mean, I just think I don't think Doug was here. I mean, if Doug was here his entire career, there's not a record that's touchable. You know what I mean? Like, if that guy's on one team for his entire career, like, good luck.
Yeah, so true. Last one here, actually second to last one. Does the legendary Pedialyte fridge still exist in the Calgary Stampeders locker room, and does it still have a lock on it?
I love that you still remember that.
Yeah, it saved my life. Bo, I went out to Cowboys way more than I should have for being in a training camp. That thing saved my life every morning. Unless I walked in and the lock was on it, then I just felt like I was dying all over again.
Yeah, hey, I think people understand the CFL is a little bit different than other leagues. Like we have 6 months off in the off season. Like we're a league that likes to have fun. This game is here to have fun, and I think guys enjoy their wins. So the Pedialyte's always there in the morning after the games. It's always there. But yes, at a certain time, Gio takes that key and he locks it. So you got your moment to get in there and get it. But then after that, he doesn't want guys coming in and taking 50 of them, taking them home.
Yeah, that's the biggest danger of that. And the last one I got for you here, a bit of a thought process, a bit of a mind game. Would you trade 2014 ring or 2018's ring to get 16 and 17? Would you ever trade 14 or 18 if you could trade 1 for 2? And now you've got 16 and 17.
That's messed up. Man, I'd say the hardest part about that is I would never trade 14's ring no matter what, because it's the first one, it's the first year as a starter. I would maybe trade 18's just to have 16 and 17, because 16 we were 15 or 16 1-1, something stupid.
Yeah.
And we lost to a 99 team. And the next year we're 15-3 and lost to a 99 team. It's just that the 18 team, I would say, is the closest team, like knit wise, I've ever played with. And I would definitely trade that ring right now because I don't have it since it got stolen.
Oh, so, man, that still hasn't been found yet. I read the story about that.
Yeah, no, they found the guy like right away. They had him on camera. They found him right away, but no.
Did it get pawned and it just disappeared?
No, he traded it for extracurriculars. Yeah.
It's a great way of putting that. Very politically correct.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, that's a really awesome question. I would say if I did, it would probably be the 18 ring just for the 16 and 17, because hey, now you have 3. and they would be back to back. So that's pretty tough.
Yeah, it's interesting how much you value the 14 ring though, because I would have bet going into this just blind if I would have asked you that you would have traded 14 so you could have a three-peat. But you're saying no, 14 means way too much.
Yeah, man, it does. Like it was just that. I mean, it's the catalyst of the career, right? Like it's the first year as a starter, and the coaches take a chance on you, and they protect you in the draft to Ottawa. So Drew goes somewhere else, Kev goes somewhere else. Or sorry, Kev goes somewhere else, Drew stays, and I'm the guy the next year, and we go out and win it. It's like it'd be way too hard to trade what that ring meant to my entire career.
Yeah. Bo, it's fantastic catching up with you, man. I appreciate all the time on short notice being able to put this together. I will say the one thing that's been ringing in my mind the entire time we've been doing this interview is that when you talk about that little 2-day mini camp tryout otherwise, and Huff only wants to see 2 throws, and you nail the 2 throws, and you get in, you get out, is if you call me sight unseen and you say, listen, I got this kid from Katy, Texas, and his name's Bo Levi Mitchell, I'm just going to sign you to a contract immediately.
Just the name, just where I come
my
from?
God. If you say I've got a kid somewhere out here on a grass field from Katy, Texas named Bo Levi, I'm giving you $1 million signing bonus like Stephen McGee.
$1 million is what I'm talking about. I appreciate that. What you should do, you should call Dave and interview him about that day of the 2 throws. That's what you should do.
That's good. We're actually doing a bit of a series that I'm just calling CFP Stories, which is little, parts of CFL history from around decades recently, and being able to interview people about them in kind of like short form podcasts. So yeah, I think Bo Levi's little mini camp day will certainly be one of those CFP stories in the future. But thank you again, man. I look forward to doing this with you again in the near future, and always fantastic to catch up with you.
Yeah, Marshall, man, appreciate it, man. It's always fun talking to you. Good catching up.